right, we're going to go
Thank you all very
and
much.
get this ball rolling.
Check
Thank
one,
you.
check two. All right.
Mickey, are you good for cutting it?
Yes, sir.
All right.
I got Q&A if you want.
Yep. Did I give, did I already give you host? Wait, hold on.
No.
Who has, hold on. I have it. No, oh, there we go. That just didn't show up in the interface there for a second. Stand by. Okay, Mickey, you should have the con.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to office hours. If this is the first time you have come here, welcome. Good to have you here. There's a couple things you'll notice here. One is that you're probably, if you're new, are in the participants area, and there's also a panelist area. You're probably wondering, how do I get into the panelist area? Well, what you need to do to get into the panelist area is to show up early. So we open the doors at 6 a.m. We then start doing mic checks around 6:40. And if you're not in during that time, you probably won't be in the panel. So anyway, so that's how you get into the panel. If you're going to do that, you want to make sure that you have good internet, good audio, good video. So make sure that you are kind of ready for it. And the best thing to do is watch a couple times and watch through the mic check and just kind of get a sense of whether you think you have the connection and the camera and the mic to do this. So anyway, but you're very welcome to join us. You can start at 6. 6 is pretty laid back as we kind of go through that. And then at 6:30, we give out a link to the Discord. Discord is our online chat. And we've got about 300 and some people that are all sitting there chit-chatting, because this isn't enough. 3 hours isn't enough together, so we just keep going all day. So anyway, so you're more than welcome to come, but you do have to be there by 6:30. By the time I'm talking about it now at 7, it's expired, and you'll have to come again. So anyway, so that's how you get into the Discord. If you're in the participants area and you want to ask a question, then you need to, what you want to do is use the Q&A. Use the Q&A for questions, use the chat for chat. Don't use the chat for questions. Don't use the Q&A for comments. So those are the kind of keep the lanes clear there so we can kind of move through that. If you're a panelist, if you're joining a panel, if you're going to join the panel and you have a question, make sure to ask that question before you jump into the panel, before you raise your hand. And by the way, the way to get into the panel as a panelist is to raise your when you're in as a participant before 7 o'clock, really before 6:40, raise your Zoom hand, and then I know that you want to join the panel. So anyway, so make sure to add your questions into the Q&A. We usually start the hour with those questions, and oftentimes we end the hour with those questions as well. So that usually is the whole of or a big chunk of it. If you're in the panel and you want to keep on talking, you want to add something to what we're talking about, raise your physical hand. Try not to interrupt the conversation, but just raise your physical hand. And then if you have a new question in the panel, then you want to raise your Zoom hand. So I know that you have something new that you want to go to. Excuse me. I'll just, so anyway, so that's the basic setup. We've got a lot of stuff going on this week. Today, Tucker Dragoo is going to talk about working with Don Eisenberg in the Dalai Lama's, in His Holiness the Dalai Lama's team, and building a 14 language multi-stream. So different languages going everywhere, and he and his team figured that out. We'll talk a little bit more about that. He and the team, our team, figured that out. So this all started with a seed of an idea from Joe Wasser, who's here in the panel. And then a bunch of people getting pulled all together, and it ended up with a really successful event that we want to kind of cover in the second hour. So we're pretty excited about it. Wednesday, Jeff Keithley is going to talk about production in the cloud. So really talking about what's possible, what you can do in the cloud as far as doing your full production in the cloud. On Thursday, Rick Markley is going to talk about volumetric capture. So this is 3D volumetric capture, which is going to become a big deal, or starting to become a big deal. So he's going to be talking and giving us an idea of what that looks like in the second hour. And then on Friday, what's in your crikey? So what do you take as an emergency kit to your shows and to anything that any kind of production you're doing? So we're going to talk about that on Friday, and then on Saturday is the long day. So we're going to have office hours lasts 2 hours instead of 1 hour, and then at so at 9 o'clock, we're moving things around a little bit. 9 o'clock, Nick Jushishin is going to be doing Unreal Engine tips and tricks. We've got Steve Bays doing deep cuts in Final Cut Pro, and I always want to remind people that Steve is in the Discord answering questions in Final Cut. So if you've got Final Cut questions, best place in the world to ask them. We're going to then talk at 11 a.m. about building graphics. I'll be talking about that, and a little bit of it is kind of a longer version or a more in-depth version of some of the stuff I just talked about yesterday in PBW. So we'll be if you guys missed that, you won't miss that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about it. Is what I was trying to get to on Saturday, but we'll get to it this Saturday. And then at noon, we had a real request for talking about networking. So Aaron Mailer, who engineers a lot of my shows, is going to be here talking about networking. So he's going to be answering questions. Yeah, Brian's like, yeah, Aaron is the guy, so anyway, so we're going to have Aaron kind of explain stuff for us and answer questions and question answers and all the fun stuff there. So that's what we've got coming up. Let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A.
First question. This is near and dear to your heart. You got the Pocket Cinema 4K. What lens do you use that you can control with the A10 Mini Pro?
So I don't know which lenses are powered. The powered lenses that I have that I can control zoom on are all like for Micro Four Thirds.
And Victor's question is specifically about zoom. What zoom
Right.
lenses would you
Right.
recommend?
I don't know. Does anyone know of a zoom lens? Because almost all zooms are, so we've used them on bigger cameras. We have, you can get a powered lens. So if you get a Canon mount, and there are EF, someone's got a little rumble here. Is that you, Chris?
It's me typing
okay.
every word that you're saying, Alex.
It sounds very it's
Sorry.
very deep. Anyway, so you can get powered lenses, and these are more expensive kind of broadcast lenses that have EF mounts that are built for that. And I think that you can control the zoom and focus on those. But usually we do that with outboard. They have like a motor that sits on the outside of it, and you can plug it in. I actually don't know. I think that's one for us to research, because for that mount, a lot of lenses, any Canon lens is going to be controllable. You control the focus, and that's usually the one that I'm most concerned about when I do it. And then where I really want the zoom ones are ones that are outside of my, up mounted way up above. And for those, I use the micros. And so the micros, I just put, these Panasonic motor lenses that we talked about. I think I use the 12 to 42 or something like that. I think we talked about earlier as a power. It's like iOS, I think Power iOS or whatever that Panasonic makes. And they're not the best lenses in the world, but they definitely look good for what we're doing. And they're, it's on 4K, and so it's a good deal. So, but yeah, we'll have to do some research. I don't know, and so we'll keep on looking at that and seeing what's possible. It's good. It's a good question. Next question.
So Rick Markley is interested. You mentioned yesterday the new noise assist for the sound devices mixer. He's asking about it. If you had opinion, you had mentioned it yesterday.
Yeah, let's see if you can hear it. Let me see if I can hear. I'm going to talk. Let me see. So I'm talking now.
Do one of your Shakespeare lines.
Okay, so right now this is with it on. It's been. The truth is it's been on for about a week here, so I've been using it for a while, and so this is we are glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with us. His President, your pains we thank you for, and we have matched our rackets to these balls. We will in France, by God's grace, play a set shall strike his father's crown into the hazard. So then, if we turn it off, so now it's off. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Do you hear any more hiss? We are glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with us. His President, your pains we thank you for. Can you hear the hiss when I turn it off? There's a lot of noise cancellation. Oh, you know what? Let me try turning on original sound. I didn't have that on. That might make it a little bit better. There's so much noise cancellation that goes on inside of Zoom. It might be hard to test. So here's with it on, and that's with it off. Do you hear anything?
I hear a slight hum.
I definitely hear the hiss when it's off.
Yeah. So it's there's the company that does a lot of this is a company called Cedar and Cedar Audio, and they've been known for it for a long time, and we've used a lot of cedar boxes. And anyway, so this is kind of a new plugin that can be added to the 8 series that will take a lot of noise out, and I don't think that I would want to do my original record. Yeah, and the cedar's really expensive. A 2-channel cedar is like $4,000 or $5,000 or something. I used to have a bunch of them, and they're like little magic boxes. What's interesting is that this is now a plugin. I don't know exactly what the price was going to be for it, but it's a plugin that you can buy for the Scorpio. It's a lot less than $4,000. So it's and it does it automatically. You just kind of turn it on or off. I'm going to put up some samples in Discord of me before and after later today. So I'm going to do kind of just record some, but those will be the pristine records on the Scorpio, as opposed to trying to go through Zoom and show you what it looks like or what it sounds like. But I think that it definitely makes me more comfortable. I almost want to say that I should bring my rack back in, because now that I don't have to put it in the living room where it is now, because I have something to reduce the sound. But anyway, it's amazing. It's been something that they've been working on for a while, and it's if you're dealing with a situation where if you have an 8 series or have the budget, the 8 series for sound devices are expensive mixers. But if you have those in line, it's probably one of the best noise reduction tools I've seen. So anyway, it's live, so you can put it through there. So yeah, it's anyway. So we'll do some more tests. We'll put them up on Discord. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Is that adding latency?
Not adding any latency. I mean, I'm sure it's adding like a millisecond, but it's not. It's no perceptual latency. When I listen to it on my
yeah, I'm not hearing any when you switch it in and out. So
yeah. So it's it's in right now. It's out now. So I'm it's just it's in there. In the big thing when you're using FPGAs is everything's pushed against the clock. So it's going to come out the same. It's going to come out at the same speed as everything else. Alex?
Do you know what's going on in the background of that? Is it just an FFT filter or a couple of parametrics? What is it actually doing to drop that noise?
I don't know. I think maybe we
I think it's a downward expander.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll maybe I'll see if I can get John to. I'll go do some research. See, we'll either get John on here or I'll ask him some questions and come back with. I'll go research it some more. All right. Any other? Okay. Next question.
I think after that response, this will be an easy answer. Johnny is asking between the sound devices MixPre 6.2 or the Zoom F8N. Opinions, recommendations. Thanks.
I don't know what the price difference is between those two. I think that they're close. I mean, I'm always going to lean towards the MixPre. The MixPre is going to be. I mean, the F8N has got a lot of features. I think that they're better implemented in the MixPre. I think that so I think that's the. I mean, I'm a big snob about your preamps. Like how your audio is being managed. The preamp, in my opinion, is as important as the mic. As far as how it's going to convert that. And I think that the preamps on sound devices hardware is some of the best. And so I think that, as far as a really, really clean, low noise signal, and the fact that, so the F8N is $1,000, MixPre is $85, according to Jeff Francis. Yeah. So, I mean, I would lean more towards the MixPre. I don't know what the output solutions are for the F8N. Whether there's more outs than the MixPre 6, and then the other one that I would think about is the MixPre 10, which has got a lot more, as far as routing and outputs and so on and so forth. So, yeah, go ahead, Leland. Did you have your hand up, Leland?
Yeah, I didn't realize I unmuted there. The other one that's out there that's available it's on B&H is the Tascam DR70, which is a similar device to the Zoom and the sound devices. So there's that option as well. And they're pretty solid products.
They're definitely solid. I think that when you can, and the limiter, the Nolan makes a good point that there is an analog limiter inside the sound devices and not a digital limiter, and that has saved me many, many times. So it's it's just going to be a much again. There's not you'll pay a little bit more for the number of features that you have when you buy a sound devices piece of hardware. It's just that all the features really work and they're best in class. over top of everything else. And that's why we've used Sound Devices stuff. Again, hundreds of thousands of dollars of Sound Devices stuff that I bought. And it's because it just works. It's solid. And they stand behind the products. You can call somebody and talk to them about it. It's just the kind of the Apple of audio equipment. So anyway, so that's the way, that's kind of my opinion there. Anybody else have any other opinions? Oh, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but the big differentiator with the Sound Devices stuff and the latest versions of the mixed pre's is the 32-bit float.
Yeah.
Which makes it essentially impossible to clip. The limiter's always there as a backup, but you've got an enormous dynamic range there to play with.
Well, and you have a lot of dynamic range, and then you have a lot of where the mix is. So dynamic range is 142 or 144 or something range, but then you also have the numeric range within that 32-bit float. I think is like 1500 dB or something. And so, especially if you are going to record in the field as a single operator, what's funny is that you think of 32-bit float as a high-end solution, but it's really the run and gun person who's going to do interviews. Being able to have something that, you screwed up the levels by a lot, it doesn't matter. It's like, I was off by 40 dB or I was off by 30 dB. You're still going to be able to recover it. It's all there. The data's all there, and so that's the thing that is just crazy, in that kit, and so I think that's the thing to check out. Yeah. Next question.
Philip Trudala says, and I apologize, I have to read this verbatim because it's an alphabet soup. Hi, all. Pretty new to all this. Trying to set up my own NGINX server. I don't know how to pronounce that word. To receive RTMP streams and convert and stream to HLS. Need some pointers for good tutorials and or caveats.
I'm looking. Has anyone used these? I mean, the most common way to do this, and I'm not sure, this is not something I'm particularly familiar with. I mean, generally when we're converting those in RTMP stream, we're using something in the cloud. We're using or anywhere we're using either like an Elemental or Elemental in the cloud or Wowza. Those are the servers that we tend to use to make those conversions. I'm not as familiar with this server. Does anyone have any? Oh yeah, go ahead, Tucker, and then Paul. Oh, can't hear you, Tucker.
Taylor has a hand up as well.
Tucker, can't hear you.
Let's try again. Other mute.
There we go.
So that feels a lot like rolling your own CDN, basically, is kind of what the question is, I think. Not a lot of experience with it, but just context as to what I believe that is.
Okay.
Yeah,
and Paul,
it is. Essentially, Nginx has its own RTMP module. You can do ingest. You can do a whole bunch of things with it. You typically will run it through FFmpeg or something to get whatever transformations you want. The question was HLS. So there's an HLS export out of FFmpeg.
Yep.
You can set it up through like a Python script. It'll work great for that sort of thing and on the low end, but it depends really what you want to do. I don't unfortunately have links to a good tutorial on this readily available. Catch up with me on Discord. I will get you something that works.
And again, FFmpeg could definitely do that transformation. And I'd have to understand more about why you're using that server. I mean, the industry standard for most things is Wowza, for that type of thing. I mean, that's what they kind of built up on. So, if you just hadn't researched Wowza, that's the one that a lot of people are using for that. Whereas, but if there's some reason that you're using this one specifically, then it makes sense. So,
Red 5 would be an option as well, Alex. It's open source.
Okay. Great. Paul, did you have 2 cents, and then I'll come to you, Taylor.
Yeah, just a quick one. I have actually done this a couple of years ago. I built exactly the same setup. So if the guy wants to follow me up on Discord, I can give him some.
And would there be a reason that you use this instead of Wowza for what's? I don't know what this server does.
Well, it's kind of like Wowza, but it doesn't cost anything.
And it's quite minimalist, low resource utilization, relatively efficient. but it does lack a lot of the functionality that you're going to see in
So
Wowza.
in these cases, what I would say is you're trading time for cash. Like it's your time to put it together. You don't have to pay as much.
No,
it's
relatively easy to put together. You're saving
No, but then you don't have a bunch of features.
You're trading resources for flexibility.
Okay. All right.
It's also a
Taylor.
good way of
Taylor, go
practicing
ahead.
as well.
Taylor, go
Okay.
ahead.
I built one of these as well. Whoever asked the question, there's a gentleman who gives a great tutorial. It's a YouTube channel called Nerd on the Street. Alex, I find this type of setup, as you mentioned, industry standard. The reason why I'd recommend this to somebody is for the hobbyist or the smaller organization who maybe can't afford the larger platform but still need a similar type thing. The other common use of this is a restreaming option.
Right. One thing that I would say is that I recommend it for the hobbyist, not necessarily a small organization, because the problem with the small organization is, I mean, unless you're a hobbyist in the small organization, I see this in organizations where somebody set them up with something that was relatively inexpensive, and then they can never change it or never make it work, and when it breaks, it's constantly broken, and because they don't have the resources to support it. So with anything that takes more turning, we just want to make sure that we think through, like, for me, I build websites on Squarespace because I'm not an HTML person. Like I don't like it. Like to me, I have to use the web.
Right. I hate that I want to be obnoxious about this, Alex. That is the point. You build websites on Squarespace. If you have the expertise to implement this, then it should be implemented this way because it is efficient and performant.
I understand. But what I'm saying is that the with the people who are in the I'm flat out that I don't like the web very much. So I deal with it. But what I mean by that is, for a while I had specialists build my website. So I didn't always build it in Squarespace. I had people build it, and it was this constant drag of me constantly dealing with how to fix it and who to fix it. And now that person's not there anymore. And now, all this other stuff. So when we think about small organizations doing it, we just want to be, and this is with our video, this is with, development and everything else. They either have to have the person on staff that can support that forever, or they should use off the shelf things and not try to do anything super cheap, because it's just going to they drowned in that, And but as a hobbyist or the highly technical person, I'm 100% behind what you're talking about. Is that, I do a lot of stuff that when it comes to video, that I want it to be lean and mean, and I want to be able to design what I want to design on it. And so, there's a lot, like I like to key with a nodal compositor. Like we had pixel conduit for a long time. That is as low level as you can get as far as doing it. I want complete control. I don't want any dials. I don't want anything to be nice. I want it to be, I want to have all the control. So I totally get where you're coming from. I'm just saying that, and I know I'm going off on this, but it's something that I deal with almost on a daily basis, of a smaller company getting something that was cheap that now they can't move forward, because of it. And then it has to all be thrown away and replaced with something else. Go ahead, Taylor.
I agree with you 100%. It's kind of a circumstances type basis. If you're setting this up for somebody, are they tech savvy enough to maintain it, to use it, to do what they need to do with it? If you're setting this up for somebody who you're just wanting to set it up and leave it for them to run forever, and you don't, as a tech guy, never want to have to touch it, then yeah, I 100% agree with you.
Yep. Anyway, yeah, and if you have someone like Taylor or Colin or Paul, working on it with you, and they're committed to it, then that's, and there's a bunch of other people in here that would be the same way. Then I would definitely, go down the path of letting them, do that. The main thing is just to think about when we set up things, whether it's video or audio or other things. I have done this to people where I give them a very complex audio pipeline or video pipeline that makes sense to me because it's very malleable, and then they screw it up, and then they can't get it working, and the audio is horrible, and everything I gave them was supposed to make it better. I sent somebody down a headset with a USB pre, and it was just chaos, because it was like, to me, it's like, yeah, of course you do it that way, because that's what sounds good. But then they want to do all these other weird things that I didn't calculate for as someone who just understands how it works, and so this isn't, my comment isn't specific to the server, and it's more generalized to, as we support people around us doing what we do, to make sure we're really thinking about that process. Next question.
Next question. Christopher New says, and bear with me here. So he's doing multiple Skype or other interviews, going into a production switcher, like a TX appliance or just multiple PCs. But he wants to know if anyone has used VS100/4000. I don't know what that is.
I do.
I'm sure you do. Go.
Those are the Skype TX boxes. So here's what the Skype TX, I've owned many of them, the 100 and the 4000s. The 4000 is a 4-channel version of it. The 100 is a 1-channel version. You'll get a lot more bang for your buck on the 4000, but there's a little bit more infrastructure there. The challenge with it that we've had is the latency is higher. And for what we're doing, we stopped using them. And it's because the latency inherent in the TX box is much higher than Skype. So the raw Skype coming out of your computer is a lower latency than much lower, half of what the Skype TX box does. So there's a bit of overhead there that you get with the way that the system's managing it. Now, what it's good for, if you're doing a production and you want to slide something in that has SDI in and embedded audio coming out of it, and you can even put some analog back in to return to all the channels. You can on the VS4000, you can pack. I think we talked about this in another show, but you can pack all of the audio channels into one SDI return and then split them off into the other one. So you only need one embed to return everything. You can also use Dante, but as we found that we think we might be the only ones that use Dante on the Skype TX boxes, because it never seemed to progress anywhere. And every time we talked to them about it, they were like, "Oh yeah," And so of the Skype TX family, there's a couple different companies that make these. It's probably the new tech ones are probably the best for the price. Rito makes one that I haven't had the experience of because it's like 2 or 3 times as expensive. And then there's another company out of the UK that makes one that we didn't find very stable. So those are the kind of what we've looked at. If you're going to connect, if you're going to have a call-in show and you're going to connect people coming in and you want to go through lots of people and stack them all up and be able to talk to each one from an operator's position, it's perfect. Like it does exactly that thing. If you want them to talk to each other, it's not perfect. And that's what we learned is we were excited that we'd be able to have everybody come in and have the different guests have an interaction with each other, and their latency is too high to be, it's distractingly high when you bring them into a switcher, switch them and send them back to each other. The latency gets really high. And so, but it works. It does work reasonably well. There's still that little bit of extra latency, but it works reasonably well if you're in a studio talking to someone that's coming in over a consumer connection, a Skype connection. It does a pretty good job. So that's my 2 cents on that. Anyone else have any opinions about the Skype TX boxes?
Yeah, I've got the TC1 and I've got a 2-channel TX, and we use it for calling. It works fine.
So the one thing we did is we did a test. I don't know who we were doing that test with, but it was someone here. I apologize that I don't remember who it was, but we were in Discord talking about it. The TC1 has the low latency that you would see with a regular Skype connection. So we tested that as the right kind of connection. Now you only have 2 channels, but they were low latency. So the latency with the TC1 and which is the TriCaster, and the Skype TX box are 2 different things. So definitely it works well if you're bringing a caller in 1 or 2 at a time. That one works. We're trying to build the system that I think I put a picture up. It looks very rough right now, but we're trying to build something that we can just keep on scaling, keep on adding people. So we want to, right now we've got 6, coming in. We want to be able to just keep adding, with extra hardware, so we can get up to, my goal is to get 20, we're able to bring 20 in and reproduce this window. So anyway, so that's kind of the game that we're playing with ours. And so it felt like it was easier to scale with hardware than with software. Anyway, so that's my 2 cents there. Next question.
Philip Shane, his wife is a teacher, does stuff with Make-A-Wish. They're using Apple supplied iPads, but because of distancing, she needs to be able to manipulate an iPad that the student has remotely. Is there a way to do that you know, like we screen share with our computers?
Silence.
My first recommendation would be TeamViewer or any of the other.
No, those are,
you know,
but it's
service
iPad.
apps.
I don't think any of those work on the iPad. I don't know if that's even from a security perspective
That's a
allowed.
good question. Yeah,
Tucker?
you're probably right.
Used to be called BombGuard, but I think now it's called Beyond something. But it's what we use for remote access, and it will allow it. It is not super user friendly to get it set up because you do have to kind of go through a bunch of security not loopholes, but there's a lot of security stuff you have to kind of get through, and Apple does not like that to be a thing. So it'd be a pretty big lift for teacher to explain to the student. It would be easier to explain to the student what to do for the original thing than it would be to get them to enable the function of you controlling it.
And the one thing I don't know about, like another one that I would think about looking at is Jamf, JAMF. Jamf is kind of the heavy lifting enterprise software for deployment across the Mac platform and across iOS platform. But I don't know whether it does do, Jamf's what a lot of big companies use to manage their entire fleet across the system, and so that might be one to consider. And I don't know. I know some people there, so I'll find out if there's any issues with that. Go ahead, Taylor.
There is a product out there that's common in the MSP world on the tech side called Screen Connect. It's now owned by ConnectWise. You can download an app on there and screen control and see it that way.
But you can see it on an iPad?
Yes. Yep.
Whoa. What is it called?
Screen Connect.
Okay.
The parent company is ConnectWise. They're famous in the tech industry for providing managed service provider tools for tech shops or computer shops.
Okay, that's great.
I may have just found another. Sorry, I may have found another called Addigy, which is ADDIGY. Looks like it's an Apple mobile device management application. So it has a free trial. Probably take a look at it.
Yeah, and it does look like there's a Scott Mann put something in about controlling over the same Wi-Fi network. There's a way to control those, but it doesn't look like it sits over the WAN. So that would be so there's a couple things in there. Yeah, if we can put them into the chat and maybe have them find their way to Discord. I think that what we're going to do is I'm going to add another channel in Discord. It's like chat links. And we just someone just puts them in there. Whatever happened in the chat, someone just keeps passing them into that.
Good idea.
Yeah.
As a general security consideration for any of these management tools, they're generally going to be designed to operate over the same LAN and not over a WAN. Normally, you would VPN into a particular location and access the device from there.
Yep.
If you need to do so remotely.
And that's what I was about. Yeah, you're ahead of me as always. So yeah, the VPN is having some kind of VPN or some way for the students to get into it where they're in the same, basically in a virtual version of a LAN is going to be definitely a way to make that possible. But yeah, Colin's absolutely correct. How often do I say that? Colin's absolutely correct. Anyway,
mark that time code.
Okay, next question.
Ernest Floyd, he wants the best way to monitor his broadcasts on his live streams. And what he wants to do is have a split screen on a large monitor with real-time meters. I think he's talking about audio monitoring.
Yeah. So what we've done in the past is, and I think let's see if I have it, if I can show it quickly here. Anybody else that has an idea about that, go ahead and jump in. I'm going to see if I can find this really quickly. I think I have a photo that I was showing yesterday, and so it might be easy for me to pop up real quick. Let's see here.
Trying to monitor more than one feed at a time is the question, I think, here. WebRTC is obviously one way that works well. If you're streaming out WebRTC, that same feed can go into another platform. Like I use Proficonf or LifeSize to send a separate stream, whether you're using NDI as a source or WebRTC as a source. and then people can just conference into that location or use that as a secondary screen, or split your
So-
screen with that window so that you can see how the feed's going out.
I'll show you the really painful. Leland will always tell you the software version, and then I'll go, hey, let me show you the most painful hardware version possible. So this is how we do it. Do you guys see that? So what you have over here, I don't know if I can hit play and it'll work. Let's see here. There we go. You still see it?
I see a lot
You
of
guys-
Black Magic hardware and Terranexes.
Yeah, there is. So you don't have to go all this far. It's just a photo that I have that'll show the screens. And so, yeah, one of these racks, the rack with all the Terranexes is the actual operation rack, and the other one is just display for the feeds. And what you're seeing here is I can't update it, but all these graphs on there, that's our audio, and that's using. There's a new one this one doesn't work anymore. This is Spectre. They got into some kind of legal back and forth, and so the code is like floating around. It's amazing software that you can't use anymore. But there's another one that I recommended on MacBreak, and now I can't remember it because I haven't had to do this for a little while. But what you have here is one of these is this one here, I believe, that's the incoming. That's our ingest. That's the SDI signal, and then this one here is basically we're using at the time. It's any of the routing depending on your hardware. It can be, and you can do all of this part just in a computer, which is that this is set up with one Mac Mini. So it's showing, this is the YouTube output. And then it basically it's been then routed in via audio hijack or Soundflower and made available to the piece. And then you have a bunch of graphs that show you what's going on. And so, this is the metering setup that we've used for years as far as looking at how to do it. Now there's a video meter up here. That's Video Scopes, Scopebox, that does the same thing. So we have the video. We don't look at the video going out because we know it's going to be relatively the same. We look at the video coming in to see if it's peaking. Then we look at our raw audio going in and then our audio in the stream. And the thing that really, this level meter, this histogram is useful. The level history is the key to the operation. So that tells us, we can look at it and see what we're doing. We can color code this if we want. Of course, you have meters here. This is the spectrogram and the spectrograph. This is basically a cross section of that, which lets us see a lot of things. And then this is the Ligezu, if I say it correctly, meter, which tells us whether we have our audio signals coming in correctly, whether we have a polarity issue or not. So anyway, that's kind of our little setup. But you definitely can get some software that you want software metering, and then you just need something either on your PC or your Mac to route that audio into that app as a sound source.
How about network, Alex? Do you guys monitor the network at all?
Oh yeah. We're going through a Meraki. So the Meraki has a ton of graphs that'll show us what's happening, in our stream. And it's funny. I always have this concern that I'm streaming through my Meraki to the rest of the world. But the thing is that it's the only way for me to really know that if I'm getting, if I don't go through it, I can't see what's going on, and I feel like I'm blind. So when I'm streaming, so I prefer to go through my router so that I can see what's happening in the connection. But the Meraki routers give you an enormous amount of information about packets and everything else that you need on a regular basis. And so that graph oftentimes that's not up with these screens, but we have somebody else with that graph up constantly looking at it to see if we're getting bandwidth on the way out. Anybody else? Okay, next question.
It looks like
I'm going to jump down to Tom Rowe. What switching options are viable for using multiple USB cameras into Skype or Zoom? I recognize it's not ideal versus higher SDI HDMI cameras, but some of my users have requested.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that can do that. The cheapest one is OBS, and OBS works on the Mac or PC. Then, of course, Memo Live. And if someone wants to go ahead and post that link to Memo Live, it's available on the Mac. You can use it for free as part of this group until the end of July. So if you want to play with something like that and you're on the Mac, that's a free option as well. So there's Memo Live, there's OBS, Wirecast works on both platforms. vMix will see those, as well as even TriCaster. Will TriCaster see USB cameras, John?
I don't remember.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it does or not, but vMix will see it. So there's plenty of software, depending on where you buy into it, there's plenty of software that'll see those. I've definitely done, especially in the early days, I definitely did a bunch of stuff where we would plug in as many USB cameras as we could to do that process. And so if you're looking for that there, and there's A Mitchell's put in into our chat the link that you can go to request a license for Mimo Live if you're on the Mac, which I think is a great solution on the Mac to do exactly what you're doing. And it'll also see NDI, so you can get NDI HX camera on your phone and wirelessly make it a camera available on your on your show. And I think OBS does that as well. But I like Mimo Live a lot as far as on the Mac. But there's a lot of tools, and I would get started with OBS probably just to kind of get things done. And if it starts to work, then you can start investing in something bigger. Or if you're on the Mac again, start with Mimo Live because you can.
One of our colleagues
Anyway.
has confirmed that you actually can use USB cameras with the TriCaster.
There you go. So if you really want to go big with a TriCaster and then get web cameras.
Yeah,
so
everyone needs a bottleneck in their system. Why not go with a webcam?
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely, you can definitely do a lot of really fun things with a couple webcams. The webcams now have gotten really good. This is my favorite at the moment, which is this little stream cam, which I think is right now made of like unobtainium. So, but these are great looking cameras and USB-C. So they're, for my iMac, they're pretty good. And I've got a couple of them, and cutting between them is fun. Next question.
Johnny Styles says, Tucker, your camera color is looking great, but what software do you use for checking sound in the pre-show?
Okay. It's pretty straightforward, but I'm using WLM plus stereo, which is this application here. And it is plugged into, there we go. So this is vMix. You can use, if you're on a Mac, you can use Audio Hijack to get a similar effect. But you do need something to host the VST plugin. It's not on my voice, it's just on the Zoom return channel. So down here we've got from Zoom, and right here we've got plugins. And I'm just taking WLM plus stereo, piping that over, piping that audio over, and that's where we get that return. And that's it.
That's great. But it's just a VST plugin, right? So anything that'll take a VST plugin, you could theoretically have that work, and it works on the Mac as well.
Yep, it does. And I would use Audio Hijack. I've helped several people set up their systems with Audio Hijack to do just that. Yeah,
that's great. Fantastic.
Jump on Discord, ask me. I'll jump in.
You guys have broken me down, by the way. I'm installing. I've installed vMix on my big machine, and so I'm like, again, I'm not convinced I'm going to use it for all my shows, but I'm like, oh, these guys are doing cool things with the vMix. I have to try the vMix. So anyway,
it's really solid, Alex. I've had it crash twice in 5 years on me.
But the problem is you had it crash right in front of me. That doesn't make me feel better.
That was sad. That was a terrible example.
That doesn't make me feel better. If 1 out of 2 is one of them was right in front of me, how do I know? How do I know if it was only one? Because it's a high percentage. So it was like the worst part. It was like the 5th show or something, or the 10th show, and then Leland was gone. So anyway, it was right after, let me show you something. Boom. so that's pretty brutal. That's the thing that keeps me, that's what keeps me up at night. And the big thing is that, I lean on hardware for a lot of the stuff we do, in a lot of ways, because, there's so many different places I can go if something goes wrong, and when you put it all in there. But I think that as I'm bidding out on stuff that is, some things that people are trying to get, there's a little lower budget, that we need a little bit more flexibility, that, it does need to be run by one person, and there's a lot of good things, I'm starting to lean more and more towards it. I have so many deep scars on my back from TriCasters that I don't think I could open it up without twitching. So I need to go to something new. I need a new relationship. So anyway, so I think that vMix, what it'll probably lead to is some hours on a Saturday of us all, as soon as I get it installed and get comfortable with it, we'll do a get together where Leland and Tucker and some of you guys show me how to use this thing. I'll be like, I don't understand where this button goes. So anyway, next question.
Colin Sandy wants to just a clarification. So Wowza, is that just an Apache server on steroids?
I think that'd be a very simplified definition of it. I mean, it's a full software package that basically manages transcoding in the cloud or on any computer. So I don't know if it's just an Apache server. I mean, I guess anything that's on
an Apache server.
Okay, I was
gonna
gonna say, but you could say there's a lot of things that would be just an Apache server that's on steroids, but that's like everything that uses an Apache server. But I don't think,
my recollection is it's Java based.
I don't know what it's based on.
And it doesn't necessarily deliver web traffic, HTTP traffic, other than HLS, which I don't know if it does natively. I think it passes that out to a separate Apache server normally, or at least a well-constructed configuration would pass that out to a caching web server.
And the big thing is that we've used Wowza for instance, one of the things that Aaron does, who's going to talk on Saturday, is Aaron. And we started managing it, and then Aaron just kind of took it over. Is the Open in the UK, and so he basically all the local streaming in the entire, not to the outside world, but just if you open a phone at the Open, you can watch live streams of the rest of the show, and that's all distributed. We do all of that in Wowza, or he does that all in Wowza, a couple servers, and and it's a handful of servers, serves like 30,000 people. So anyway, so it's a Wowza is pretty good, and the big thing is you can spin it up in the cloud really quickly. So you get an instance, you can throw you can one or many instances up, and get it moving. And so it's pretty slick software for that type of thing. It's kind of a relatively turnkey solution to make that work if you don't want to do as much lifting. And then of course there's the Elemental Cloud, which is just designed for streaming. Just designed for that, and probably a little bit higher performance, but probably a little more expensive too. Anyway, next question. Last question. Is it the last
question? It's not really a question, but we'll let it sneak. I want to remind people Q&A is for questions. Just wanted to say thanks, Mr. Alex, for answering my question about the Roland VR 1 HD switcher. It works. No bells and whistles. Thank you.
So this is a follow-up. This is a follow-up. Ant had sent me. Ant's a host over at Twit, and he had sent me a question about the difference between the ATEM and the Roland, and I was like, well, I mean, the ATEM's got software and it's got a lot of other features, and it can take more HDMI inputs. I always get it. Does anyone use Roland hardware? You do, John?
Mike does.
Okay. So
yeah, we use it for the California State Parks because rangers or interpreters aren't really techie, and so they like the buttons. And we have 3 of them, and they're working very well from the redwoods down.
Knowing what you know now about the ATEM Mini, what would you say as far as comparing the ATEM Mini versus the Roland?
The ATEM Mini for $299 and 3 inputs is something that I'm probably going to be moving the parts to, particularly when we're doing some stuff with divers and we need a camera underwater and a camera topside. But the Roland just works. I have people who have never touched it. We have a little rundown sheet. They know a lot about elephant seals. They know nothing about electronics, and we're doing video conferences 6 or 7 a day in multiple locations, and they're all on Rolands.
And the other advantage, like if you're on a VPN with the ATEM Mini, you can reach into somebody else's switcher and take over. So that that's another little
yeah. But I can reach into the Roland. The Roland has a app that runs on the computer, and I take over their screen remotely.
Oh, that's great. Their screen remotely, or their switcher.
I take over the screen and run the app that's local to the switcher.
Okay, so it has that. Okay, that's good. And because we've got some time, when do you do stuff underwater? When are you going underwater?
When the parts opened up their first trail in Tahoe at Crystal Cove, we had divers that went down walking the trail, and we had a drone following them. The national parks have one at the Catalina Island, where they regularly are down doing interpreting. And the parks diving team is trying, when you create your little box, I'm going to bring you the box that we're building for divers that comes up to the top side.
Well,
but yeah, that's what
we've done some stuff with divers, and so I'm super interested. I find it magical. So we've done some Q&A with divers underwater, and other than listening to the rest, you have to kind of get used to listening to the respirator while they take a breath in and talk and everything else. It's the coolest thing, and I guess the thing that I'm really interested in general around the parks is finding ways to allow people to virtually tour the parks, and that's all over the world. There's just so many interesting things, but California's got. I'm most familiar with California. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities to do Q&A. We did a Q&A with Nat Geo that was with a photographer, and it's all wireless, and I think we showed the rig at one point, and it was just awesome. And I was like, we should be doing this every day. Like, it's so cool to be able to people to learn what they're actually looking at. What were you gonna say, John?
So have you seen Time Looper at all, the app?
No.
We have a number of demonstrations we're doing, but the latest Time Looper with virtual reality, you essentially use your iPhone. You could do it with goggles, or you could do it without it, and you hit a mark on your floor in your living room, and a little redwood grows, and then you can grow it to life size, and you can go up into it and view the canopy. So yeah, there's Interp Tech, it's a group at parks that are trying to figure out how to use technology to get the parks out to the people. So they're doing a lot of fun things. We should have it be a second hour sometime.
Absolutely, because it's definitely something that I'm interested in general. I mean, specifically with California, my wife does these. She does these hikes, or she used to. She's too busy doing Zooms now, but where they have these group hikes. There was someone in San Rafael at College of Marin that is just amazing at giving tours, of all these different paths. And she'd come back with all the information of what she learned. And I was like, I don't understand why we're not doing that. Like, we should have someone with a live view walking around behind them, and and taking, letting people all over the world ask questions, and that type of thing. So
we've been working with the parks with another group that does photo walks, and they do it for retirement homes and people who are in hospitals. So we've actually had some of our interpreters with a iPhone go out and be beamed directly to some kids in hospitals that could not go out and experience it. It's a lot.
That's great.
It's pretty touching when you see it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, you're using the Roland?
Yeah. I actually started off with the ATEMs back before the scalers were implemented on the inputs, and they were a nightmare for live, for doing IMAG and stuff like that, and having to scale down the computer outputs and all. So we went to the Rolands for all of that, and the Rolands just work. Now, I really, really like the software in the ATEMs, and I'm getting ready to buy my own ATEM. The Rolands that I work with right now are all property of other companies that I work with. But I've got one sitting right here in my living room right now that's on loan to me for free for the duration of the event of the Corona thing here. And I'll be using that on the wedding on Sunday.
That's great.
I've got the VR50. It's only a 4 input, but it's HD SDI, HDMI. It's got multi-views. It's got a built-in screen, and it's touch screen. I don't get a preview program unless I set it up a certain way, but it doesn't work that well in that aspect. So, but it's really, really good. It's got 8 ins for. It's got the 4 video sources for audio input, as with follow on or off, and input delay and output delay. And then it's also got 4 extra audio sources built in, all XLR. So
yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
And then I should say, this is, I don't go make a presentation without this. It's
right. And
what's that? John, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, it's the Roland V02 HD, and essentially it's got 2 HDMI inputs and switch back and forth, and you could still store 1 frame in it. So when I'm at a presentation, you got 4 people on the panel. They all brought their computers. They're unplugging it and plugging it in. It's a hassle, and I just use this,
And that's actually what I'm my use case for carrying around the ATEM Mini is to be able to just plug a bunch of people in to do it. So it's interesting. Now, how much does that cost? How much is the VO2?
Now you're asking money. I think it's more expensive than, I think it's almost as much as the a Mac Mini Pro.
He's a teacher. Everything's free.
Not quite so. I was a teacher. Now my wife has me on a tight leash. She's very concerned every time I watch your show. but I think this was about $600.
Yeah.
But it's just rock solid. I never have any problems. I haven't taken the Mini out on the road because the Mini showed up and I stopped going on the road.
Oh, right. I'm always curious because I'm very curious of people using the Roland, because every time I'm at NEB, I see them and I'm like, who uses these? It turns out a lot of people use them. So it's it's just a kind of a thing that I just didn't know about. And I definitely see where they fit into. Now I see more of, when you guys are talking about it, of these kind of rock solid, all just kind of, they do what they do.
They're
You can
real simple to put in the hands of a fairly inexperienced but somewhat experienced technician at a show, and just say, look, here's the window with the 4 cameras on it. Here's the 4 buttons. Press the one we tell you to press, and that's what'll be in program. And then we can go into the inside of it and reroute a lot of other things that they don't have to worry about.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. So that's
when you have to do that, it becomes a hassle. I had one that died, and then I had all the delays put into it. We had a remote camera at Año Nuevo. There's a camera that's watching the elephant seals, and that was being fed directly into one of them, and we lost. Yeah, it's great that you can set it up, save that setting, and then if the machine breaks and you stick a new one in, you just write over the settings. And I've been able to do that remotely.
Yeah.
That's great.
I did one event where we had a DJ that was about 200 feet away outdoors in a tent. And then we had a huge tent that we had a small sound system in. And his music was just loud enough to be annoying. But if I put it into the sound system in the big tent, I had to delay it. And so it was really nice having input delays as well. And it's got an overall output delay, so you can really match everything up, fine tuning.
Anyway, yeah, that's great. I think that it's interesting. By the way, I promised before we switch over to our second hour, yesterday I cut off, and I don't have it set up now. But I wanted to explain what I was doing yesterday when I said I might have changed the settings on Zoom. I think that Zoom in general is upgrading to 720p because we're seeing it kind of pop up in places. And what I wasn't sure of is whether I had triggered it at the beginning, because I started with this thing that basically did a force of 720p using my QuickTime. So what I did, and again, I don't have it set up right now, but I wanted to explain it because I promised I would explain it today, is that I routed my switcher via a web presenter into QuickTime. So in QuickTime, I said, make a new movie. And then I just left the QuickTime movie opened. So the QuickTime movie sitting there opened. Then on the same computer, I opened up Zoom, and then I told Zoom to screen share my QuickTime. And what that did is it hardened it to a hard 16:9, and that is an input from my switcher. And because my audio is all embedded, it all came in sync. And what it did is I knew that I was going to get a slightly lower frame rate, but what it meant was I could still use my switcher and my draw-on tools and all the things that I wanted for my presentation. But it was going to be you could still read the screen, because if I pushed it in via video, you can't always read the screen. But what I did notice, and I'm not, again, that's my little hack, my little screen record hack to kind of force quality down Zoom's throat. It took me a little while to figure out how to hack it. That's what I was up at 2:00 in the morning yesterday, figuring out how to do. But I think it's an interesting model. But what I have seen in a couple different shows now is you see it trying to do 720p. Like suddenly that's what we saw yesterday. And that's why because it was the first time I had ever used that, and I happened to see it there. And I wonder whether the Sunday issue was related to, it's not. Yeah. So we'll leave that alone. Anyway, so but the 720, I think we're going to start seeing rippling out into Zoom, and that's going to change a lot. I think that a lot of people don't want to, they get frustrated with Zoom, and they get frustrated with stuff partially because of the audio quality and the video quality, and it does appear like we're getting more.
Well, Zoom was 720 before. It was when they grew from 10 to 300 that they had to make some changes. It's coming back.
That's great. Yeah. So it's anyway. So that's what we're kind of we're seeing it, and it's funny because every time someone pops into 720, you're like, whoa, they all look like they're in focus. Like I suddenly, and you see whose cameras are whose, and it's gonna be an expensive upgrade for all of us here because what was okay at at a lower resolution is now you're going to have to now up your game again. So yeah, and it is true that Zane was saying that it's 1080p is Skype is still 1080p, which is but usually outside of the range of most web cameras. So most of our web cameras are 720, at least the ones that are built in. So anyway, that's the end of our Q&A, and now we are going to shift gears and start going down the path of talking about languages. So multi-language streaming. I want to kind of give you a little bit of background on it, and then I'm going to hand it off to Tucker to talk about, and hopefully Joe will jump in as well. So
YouTube.
Sorry, say it again.
Are you going to stop the YouTube?
Oh yeah. Can we go ahead and we can? Did you?